You know, when we talk about grazing cattle, the idea is to get the maximum gains with the most efficient use of your pastures. And one of the tools for doing this is something called intensive grazing. We're at the West Kentucky Research and Education Center today in Princeton with Dr. Roy Burris. And Roy, could you tell us a little bit about the project that's going on where we're standing?
Well, we're grazing 16 acres of alfalfa in an intensive management situation where we can concentrate the cattle to utilize the forage in a quick and rapid and efficient manner, and then we can rotate on, leaving a good rest period for the forage to recover. So it kind of approximates what happens in a actual harvesting situation. But in this case, we're using the animals to harvest the forage all at one time for us.
So the idea is, Roy, that you move these animals from paddock to paddock?
Yes, we do rapidly. They graze it quickly, and we in this case, if we've got 8 paddocks, we allow them about 4 days to graze or whatever it takes, and that's about 4 days. So if they go through 8 paddocks, that makes about a 32-day rotation, which is pretty close to what a farmer would actually do if he was harvesting high-quality hay. He would harvest about every 30 or 35 days, and that works real well for us, and it allows us to prevent the cattle from selectively grazing, which is what they normally do if they have access to the whole pasture. They'll overgraze one area and undergraze another. If they overgraze it, there's not enough leaf area for the plants to recover. If they overgraze it, the forage quality is low, deterioration begins. So I guess simply put, intensive grazing is where we manage the forage rather than letting the cattle manage it.
Roy, I notice we're in an alfalfa field here today. Now, what are the advantages, and then what are some of the disadvantages?
Well, very definitely the advantages are, first, the high quality of the plant. We make good gains with cattle on it. Another advantage is that it's very drought resistant, and we saw that last year when there's a lot of green areas that were alfalfa around the state when the rest was brown. So we can graze through the summer, and on fescue, where we normally have a summer slump in July and August, we can graze right through that with a high-quality forage. The disadvantage is that it requires some management, first of all, so that we graze it efficiently and move the cattle around, and secondly, that we control any possibility of bloat. And we do that here by feeding a bloat control product. We've added rumensin into the mineral mix, which also gives us some degree of help. And then by managing it, first of all, we didn't turn on to it when it was immature or wet, and we don't let the cattle become hungry before we move them. In other words, when we go on to a fresh paddock before they get starved, they want to go in and fill up on another area.
Is this fairly simple to set up? Tell us a little bit about how you set this up.
Well, since we have some advances in the electrical fences, it's really simple, because we just ran one strand of polywire around it with some temporary posts, and it only takes a few minutes and it's fairly inexpensive. We got the cattle accustomed to electric fence before we turned them in here, so we've had no problems, and the cattle are creatures of habit. Once they realize that every time you call them and open the gate, they're going into a fresh area of grass, they move very readily. So labor is not a real problem, and moving the cattle is certainly not a problem after they know what's going on.
Roy, what kind of producer do you think this might work for? Is there a certain profile that he or she would fit?
Well, as far as size, I don't think there's really any limitations on it. It could be large scale or small. But as far as the type of producer, I think it's got to be one that's willing to spend a little time with his cattle. Not a lot, but at least on probably a daily basis. We like to feed these cattle a little bloat guard every day, and we like to see them every day. And it's not for the producer that wants to turn his cattle out and go in the grain fields or the tobacco fields for 3 or 4 weeks. I think it does require just a little time on a daily basis.
We're with Dr. Roy Burris today. He's an extension beef cattle specialist at the West Kentucky Research and Education Center in Princeton. Our topic has been intensive grazing, and I'm Haven Miller for the UK Cooperative Extension Service.